Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 3 of Geeky and the Brain. Today we're going to be talking about Fallout, the new Fallout show. I am a huge Fallout fan. Played all the games, know way too much about the lore, even play 76. Don't come at me, Fallout fans. Great show. We're going to talk about the show today. I am Colleen. I am the editor slash nerd that just helps facilitate the conversation and add my 2 cents, but I will have a lot to talk about in this episode. And my co-host on either side, because I don't know where you're going to end up.
I am Nicole. I am a licensed clinical psychologist. I am also a full-time geek, however, know very, very little about Fallout. The only stuff I know about Fallout is from my dear friend Colleen here. I know another settlement needs my help somewhere, but aside from that, I really do not know much. But I will say that I very much enjoyed the show, even as from the perspective of somebody who is not a fan. So if you haven't checked it out yet, before we get into this episode, do so because it is full of spoilers. You can check it out on Amazon Prime.
Yeah. This will be full of spoilers, as Nicole said, so please don't come at me and say, I didn't watch the show. You are fully warned right now. There is going to be a title screen at first, too, that says we swear a lot, and there's going to be spoilers. In the comments, we do want to hear all about what you guys think of the show, what you think about what we're going to talk about. Please add in your comments. We love to see them. If you like this video, go ahead and hit like. And if you want to be informed when we go live, please hit subscribe. Okay, we got all the normal YouTube stuff out of the way. Let's get into the episode. So this podcast is all about breaking down nerdy culture and nerdy things and bringing a little bit of knowledge your way about it. So if you're obsessed like I am with Fallout, this is going to be a fun conversation. So we have a lot to talk about because the show is, let's first talk about the show. If you haven't seen the show, I highly, highly recommend it. Whether you're a Fallout fan or not, it's a great show. Action is on point. I don't really think there's any slow episodes. However, I was looking at it through the lens of a hardcore Fallout fan. So I wasn't really disinterested at any point because there's always something for me to look at. My husband is not a Fallout fan and he loved it. Nicole, you had mentioned in the intro that you're not really a huge fan. You have played it. We did talk about it before. You have played it a little bit.
Tried.
So I had to come in and rescue you. But it's a great show. I highly recommend it. If you haven't seen it yet, please go watch it. But this is going to be full of spoilers. We are not going to do a spoiler alert throughout. This is full of spoilers. So if you haven't done so yet, watch the show. It's fantastic. Go for it. All right. So let's start with the vaults, because I think Vault-Tec has always been something that's been super interesting to me. And they confirmed a few really, really big things in the show that was always something kind of alluded to, but never outright said. So even for the Fallout fans, there was a lot of really new, cool content and lore to explore. So let's start with the vaults. So we'll start with, there was Vault 31, Vault 32, Vault 33, and Vault 4 were the big vaults that were demonstrated. So let's start with the Vault 31, 32, and 33.
Okay.
So what do you got on your notes, Nicole? We'll start there, because I could go on forever, so.
Well, it was interesting when I was watching the show. I immediately thought of the idea of a social construct when it comes to the vaults and the wasteland as well, but particularly the vaults because it's just an interesting type of a society. And when you think about a social construct, what that means, it's a concept that exists, but it doesn't exist in objective reality. It's the result of human interaction. So basically, it exists because people agree that it exists. And they help us understand and interact with the world as we see it. For example, when you're thinking about a social construct, I always like to think about money as a social construct. So when you think about money, you have paper, you have coins, but those really don't mean anything unless people agree that they mean something. So a dollar is a dollar, $5 is $5, a quarter is a quarter, that sort of thing. The vaults really gave me that sense. Like the vaults exist as a society because the people within the vaults agree this is what our vault is. And it seemed to me, and again, not super familiar with the lore, so I don't know 100% if I have this right or not, but it seems like each vault is has its own agricultural type of a thing going on there, or they have their own society, I guess. Like they're all different from one another.
Yeah, so I can
Am I
jump
right
in
about
a
that?
yep. Not everything has its own agriculture. Actually, Vault 32 and 33 were very interesting because no other vault really has this like down home feel, like
Mm-hmm.
Midwestern cornfields, Wisconsin-y kind of feel. Um, so it's interesting that you bring up the social construct because each vault is its own, I guess, mini social construct.
Society. Yeah.
Right, but what's fascinating about it is they they didn't have a choice. None of them had a
Mm-hmm.
choice. Um it wasn't really, you said, agreed upon, and I know it's like, oh, I mean, we do the same thing. We don't really have a choice in what was in the Constitution, but we follow the laws, and we often go back to it even though it's super old and we're not going to go into the politics of that. But we see we weren't there to set up the basis of our society, but we follow what it says. Same thing with the vaults. The people of the vault didn't have a say in what happened. However, what was really interesting was the way that Vault-Tec, and based on what we saw on the show, other companies were given control of certain vaults. What was really interesting is that they were specifically put into vaults for different reasons. Some were the standard vaults where they opened after 25 years, such as the vault that we come out of in Vault 76 from Fallout 76, the game. But each one was kind of honed in on what they wanted to experiment on. And I know we're going to get back to the experiments, so I won't go too far deep into that. But, one vault was full of musicians, and they were testing how sound affected the vault dwellers when it pumped into the air. And eventually they wanted to test if this one sound frequency would make them all go crazy. And it did. But they were all musicians, so their ears were finely tuned to sound. So they were very specific on who they let into which vaults. So the societies that they accepted, or the social constructs that they accepted, were already based on something that was important to them: music, science, politics, or something that they already knew that they could grab onto. So not all of them, but in a good majority of them, they had some kind of basis and some kind of prerequisite for people to come into them.
Okay. So that makes a lot of sense. So with the experimentation and all of that, which we saw a lot more with like Vault 4, it gave me cult-like vibes. And I believe it was Maximus, who's a character on the show, who said, "This is a cult." And
Like, he can
I,
talk. Anyway, sorry. We'll get back to
yeah,
the U.S.
and honestly, like when I was thinking about that, I'm like, you're both in cults, really, like because what a cult is essentially, they're very highly cohesive, well organized, sort of secretive and hostile environments, especially to non-members, which are usually led by a charismatic person. So for me, with the vaults, I saw it as the overseer would be the charismatic leader, but also, if we're getting a little deeper into it, maybe Vault-Tec by itself is the charismatic leader here. Um, and cults, they often live together in their own little dedicated community, which each vault, it's its own dedicated community. In the recruitment process, they recruit people who tend to be a little bit more vulnerable. And vulnerability can manifest through trauma and fear. So we know that the people were, driven down into the vaults because there was a fear of a nuclear bomb being dropped, and it happened. So rightfully so. And there's some trauma associated with that, as one would expect. So it doesn't surprise me that there's a population of people just underground because they are afraid of what might be above ground. And these are authoritarian. So they're headed by a person or even a group of people who have control over the rest of the group. We see that a little bit with the vaults. I see it especially in the Brotherhood. It appeared to me that that piece of cult psychology seemed to apply more to the Brotherhood. Um, and it's important to remember that there's a lot of undue influence when it comes to cults. So due influence basically means that the people that are in a society agree, have informed consent and everything about what's happening to them. So in the world of psychology, we do experiments, and we do experiments with you know, humans, essentially. But we have to get their informed consent before we do anything. They have to agree to be part of the experiment. And when I say that, we are not lobotomizing people, taking their brains out, or anything like that. That is unethical, kids. Um,
The brain
but
bot,
we
that's all I
do,
think about.
yeah, the brain bot, yes, super unethical. But it might be something like seeing how music impacts a person's, ability to remember something that they read, or something like that. I mean, I'm just grasping at straws here. But for a cult, there's this undue influence. So these people are not allowed to question what is going on. Their inner voice is suppressed. And we see that a little bit when Lucy enters Vault 4. She's starting to question, why can't I go to level 12? And immediately the overseer is like, oh my God, why would you ask such a question? And
I loved
freaking
him, by the
out.
way.
Yeah, he was creepy looking, but I did like him as well. But there's, again, not allowed to question what's going on, and Lucy ends up going down to level 12, and immediately she's shunned from this society because she dared to question what was happening. And the happiness that people in a cult experience, it comes from this thinking that they've done something good, that they've pleased their group leader, um, and they believe that they have the truth or the best way of life. And we see that with the vaults. They think that they're going to repopulate America, that what they're doing is for the greater good. And then we see the contrast in the wasteland and the Brotherhood, that maybe that's not the truth of it. So that's the feel that I got on the vaults. And again, I could be wrong. This is me, somebody who's not super familiar with the lore, just kind of objectively seeing things. I also do see the Brotherhood very much as a cult as well. So when we kind of talk about all these things, yeah, they've got a charismatic leader as well. I don't think he's very charismatic, but regardless,
We'll get
you do
back to the
not
Brotherhood
question
of
him.
Steel. We'll get
Yeah.
back to them because we got a lot on him or them. I have like so much going through my brain about Brotherhood of Steel. Before we do that, though, so I thought it was interesting that I felt like that Vault 4 was less of a cult than Vault 31 and 32. And here's why. I think that I also have this weird obsession with researching cults. I find cults fascinating. So I come at this with a little bit of like YouTube, what's the word I'm looking for? Not professional.
Knowledge.
Knowledge, expertise. I don't know. I watch a lot of YouTube videos on cults, so obviously I'm the expert. I'm not the expert, but you look at Vault 4, and she is like, this is a cult, flat out. This is a cult. And then when she finds out the reality of these people, a lot of them are from the NCR, which we know were from Sandy Shores. They came there with nothing else to do, no place else to go. They came there for safety. They were let in, and it seems like it was part of Vault-Tec's baseline to let outsiders in because Vault 4, if you haven't watched the show, big spoiler, Vault 4 was to test radiation resilient species with and melding them with humans. That's where the gulper comes from. If you look inside the gulper's mouth, he has fingers. His hands are very human like. And you see in a video that was shown in Vault 4, which was really disturbing, but a woman gives birth to these little creatures that end up eating her. It was rough, but those were the mini gulpers. So this, which is very, very common in the Fallout world, of vaults creating something horrible that then gets released into the wasteland, and they continue to do horrible things, even though they're not really trying to. Super mutants, plenty of other things that came out of vaults. But what's interesting about Vault 4 is she goes to this meeting, they start stripping down, they start covering themselves in ashes, they start drinking what looks like blood, and it's running down their faces, and she's like, holy frig, I gotta get out of here. But then when they capture her, and they're like, we're not the Vault Dwellers, we're not the originals. people that have the claws for hands and the one eye, all of those people have been through a lot of crap, but they're the originals. Us that are not all mutated are not the originals, because Vault-Tec did all this to them. And then they're like, oh, what's your experiment? What was your experiment in your vault? Even the vault dweller, or the overseer with the one eye, goes, what was your experiment? And Lucy's like, we don't have an experiment. There is always an experiment. Always. Even the non-experimental ones, there was experiments going on. Why I think that Vault 32 and 33 specifically are more cult-like is because of Lucy. She comes out and she's like, okie dokie, like she's just ready to go. She puts her name in so that she can get a husband from a different vault, and she was doing things with cousins because that's how you practice. And like, she gets out into the real world and she's like, this is how you build a fire. Boop, 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 boop. And she's in the middle of the open, where the first thing I was like was, you're gonna die. Why would you put a fire in the open like that at night, you know? But she's like, everybody's great. And she goes into the, the shop, and Ma June is like, you're an idiot. And she's like, no, we're here to repopulate the world. It's really important. And she's like, repopulate? We're already here. Like, what are you talking about? So, I mean, you see, like, the cult-like reaction from Lucy, whereas in Vault 4, they've already seen the light. They've already seen Vault-Tec for what they are. They've already ripped that Band-Aid off, and now they're just surviving and trying to make a place for everybody. Yeah, they have some crazy cult-like things, but you look at Vault 32 and 33, and they're way more cult-like than you see in like Vault 4. So there's my tangent about cults.
And I would agree with that. The reason I got the cult-like feel from Vault 4 was really because of that sequence of events where she's attending this meeting, they're stripping down, covering themselves in ashes, drinking blood, and they're basically worshiping Moldaver. Is that the name? Making sure I have that correct. A flame mother, essentially, is what they call her. And that's what gave me that cult-like feel. Like, there's your charismatic leader right there.
Yeah.
And they're basically worshiping her. Granted, yes, when Lucy figures it out and is very scared going down to level 12 and all that kind of stuff, they do let her go, which I would not expect from a cult. Yeah. I would expect them to be like, okay, you are now going to be our next experiment. That's where I really thought it was going to go. Well, I was very, very shocked.
The people in charge of Vault 4 now are not experimenting on people anymore. That was the big thing. So they're keeping those women in those cryopods to ease their pain, is what they say. Because if they bring them out, they're going to have babies. They're going to have weird creatures coming out of them, and then they're going to be eaten alive, basically. So they're like, well, we can't bring them out. We don't want to kill them. So we're just going to kind of keep them in this cryostasis to just make sure that they're not in pain, because they're going to be in pain when they come out. So they're not experimenting anymore. I agree with you with the whole flame mother. That I can't wait to learn more about. We don't know like what kind of crazy shit that's all about, because how the frig did she go from 2077 to frig, I can't remember what year. I've looked it up like 3 times. But
22 something
2290. It was 219 years. Do the math. 2296, I think, is the year. She still looks fresh as hell. So she's a little bit older, but I don't know if it's cloning or whatever. But we'll get to her, I'm sure. But yeah. So the cult, I think there is a cult around her, whatever level that is. But as far as the Vault-Tec cult, I think you're 100% right in Vault 2 and Vault 32 and 33. I think Vault 4. I love Vault 4. Vault 4 is classic Vault. That's classic Vault-Tec. Even like the video where if he does the commercial, Cooper, the pre-Google, he does the commercial and he's like, oh, this is this is the 2 scientists, and they're going to be, living down here for 5 years. So they potentially lived in a vault for 5 years with other scientists, already starting their work, already trying to figure out radiation on human subjects. And then you see him in the video that Lucy is shown, where the Gulper is trying to break in. The giant Gulper is trying to break in and is trying to kill the 2 scientists. That's them. from the commercial. So who knows how
Mhm.
long Vault 4 was operating before the Gulper came in and killed it. But very early on, the people of Vault 4 kind of figured it out and kind of changed it. But they still have these
Mhm.
mutations because it's been handed down. So Vault 4, super fascinating to Fallout fans if you really dig into it. Because that's just classic Vault-Tec. The fact that they continue
Mhm.
to run the vault, I would love to learn more about Vault 4 because you go from the traditional vault and a lot of traditional vaults are now in shambles, overrun by their experiments, are inaccessible, are blown up, are whatever. Not There's only a handful of vaults that are still fully functional.
Mhm.
So to see a vault early on go through this realization that they're experiments, then to continue to open their doors to the outside world and continue to thrive is fascinating. So there's my sorry, I went on a tangent. Back to you.
No, no, you're good. Yeah, no, I agree that 32 and 33 definitely had more of that cult-like aspect to them as well. Just based on Lucy's behavior, it seems very, what I'm looking for, just like kind of by the book, like um, doing as she says type deal. And this is just how we operate, like you said, marrying a guy from 32 and practicing with the cousin because, this is how society is meant to be. And I see a lot of cognitive dissonance come into play when it pertaining to Lucy as soon as she gets into the wasteland because she's had this idea, it's been ingrained into her being in the vault that there's no life above the surface. And then she's confronted with this when, spoiler alert, Vault 32 infiltrates Vault 33, and it turns out that it's people from the surface world. And she thought everyone was dead. There she's been told that the goal of the vaults is to repopulate the earth. She goes up to the wasteland and she realizes that yeah, there's people around and they're not she that and especially when she gets to what is it, Sandy Shores. She sees the sign and she turns to Maximus and she goes, "There was 30,000 people here?
Yeah.
Like, we were told that there was no one." And so, also being from Vault 33, they don't really seem like they believe in violence. Like, yes, when 32 comes in, they have to defend themselves, of course, but Lucy doesn't strike me as somebody that's really used to uh, that sort of stuff. That it's just not something that happens. Everybody is this highly cohesive, everybody gets along, all that sort of stuff. So then she gets up to the surface and realizes that, not everybody is her friend. There's these big creatures, big cockroaches and things like that that actually want to harm her simply just for being a vault dweller. They want to hurt her. So she needs to engage in violence in order to survive. And where this dissonance comes in is that the reason she's on the surface is because she wants to save her dad. And she has this golden rule, or the golden rule they believe in: do unto others as you would have done unto you. So she doesn't want to hurt anybody, but in order to get her father back, she's going to have to do so. So she's constantly going back and forth between this idea of, I don't want to engage in violence, I also want to get my father. So am I faithful to my father, or do I do what needs to be done? Do I do what I feel to be right? And so when you're challenging those very deeply held beliefs because new information has been presented to you, really the only way to resolve it is either to ignore it altogether, which she does not do, or change her beliefs or behaviors to eliminate the conflict. And we see that Lucy changes from episode to episode. She gets more and more badass as we go along. Even though she's still running around okie dokie and all that kind of stuff, she's comes into her own. And one of the quotes that I really, really liked is when she sees the ghoul on the ground and he's basically dying because he doesn't have his medicine, and she says, "I may end up looking like you, but I'll never be you. Golden rule, motherfucker." And I just thought that was really, that's the first time I think we hear her swear. um, and So she's still holding on to her beliefs that golden rule, do unto others,
Mm-hmm.
but her actions suggest otherwise. So you can see, and then you definitely see it in the final episode when she's confronted with the truth about her dad, and she's like, I don't know what to do here. I believed for so long that this was our goal, and now I'm finding out that you are not the person that you said you were,
Mm-hmm.
which I thought was interesting.
Yeah. I think that the first time that you see that dissonance and her needing to like kind of come to terms with the world outside is when she has to take the Ripper, and that's the big saw thing for all you Fallout fans. For them to have the Ripper, I freaked out. I was like, "Oh my god, it's a Ripper!" I was so excited. And she has to cut off the guy's head, and she like looks around for any way out of the situation. Can anybody else do this? Is there any way I don't have to do this? Can anybody get this guy up? Um, and then she goes, okie dokie,
Okie
and
dokie.
she takes it, and you can tell she's like kind of in shock, like I have to do this, and she does it. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's it, like almost personifies exactly what you were saying, is she
Mm-hmm.
has to adapt or she's not going to make it. And I think that Dr. Wilzig is his name, I think, the doctor from the
Something
Enclave.
like
I
that.
wrote it down. Dr. Wilzig, yeah. I have notes this time. Dr. Wilzig says like you go home because you don't want to turn into what you need to turn into to survive out here. And that just set the whole precedent. I think we all knew going into the show that she was gonna have to change in order for her to be any kind
Mm-hmm.
of survive any of this. Um, but that just set the precedent of you need to change. This is going to change you. And she's not done changing. I don't think
No.
she'll ever get cynical. I think I wrote down that Lucy was the perfect person to be brought out of the vault to do this. And I will get into her in a moment once we're done with all the Vault-Tec talk. Um, anything else on vaults that you wanted to touch on?
No, it was interesting to kind of figure out, because again, I don't know much about the Fallout lore, so I'm not super familiar with Vault-Tec. I know a little bit about it just from what you've told me about it. But it was fascinating for me to see like how it went from being this great idea, like, we're going to protect you from, nuclear bombs and radiation and all that sort of stuff. It went from being this safe haven to there's some underlying bullshit going on here that we're not being told. And it really shocked me, especially when they have that meeting that Coop is listening in on, because, doesn't trust his wife at this point. He's been
Would
told some
you? I
things that,
mean,
no, I mean, he's been told some things that have now got him questioning what this is all about. And he's listening in on the conversation, and they're like, well, how are we going to go about like selling this to people? And he says, drop the bomb ourselves. I was like, oh, you're the bad guys. I get it now. You're the bad guys. And they're in, again, when we're talking about cults, that's what it is. They're selling you an idea that sounds great in theory, and they're playing on your fear and your vulnerability, and you're buying it because that's what they do. They
mm-hmm.
present this great idea.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and it turns out that are not exactly what they present themselves to be.
Well, what better way
And
to get willing participants? I mean, even if some paperwork said, "Hey, if you sign up to be you're probably gonna be fucked with." It's like, well, it's better than being
nah,
nuked. I'm just saying, like, it's better than like how many people would they have gotten?
true.
I mean, the fear of. I mean, we deal with that now. The fear
Yeah,
of nuclear
there
fear
you go.
of nuclear annihilate.
Nuclear annihilation.
Thank you. The fear of nuclear annihilation is a real fear, even for us today.
Yep.
So, I mean, if somebody was selling a vault, I'd freaking sign up. I'd be like, just in case, if it was affordable, save me a seat. But
I would, until they said no dogs in the vaults. Then I was
that
done.
wasn't for all the vaults though.
Oh, okay.
I'm sure out of 100 and some odd vaults that they had, I'm sure one of them was like one guy surrounded by dogs. So just to give you like some other experiments that Vault-Tec did,
Mhm.
One woman, 999 men. One man, 999 women, because there was 1,000 people in the vault. They said
Mhm.
200, but I believe there were some that had 1,000. They did experiments. One guy, the rest were puppets.
Oh my God.
They did a guy that they did a cloning machine. That's why I said cloning is a possibility.
Mhm.
Um, a cloning machine one. The cloning machine went out of control, so you actually walk in and the whole vault is full of enemies named Gary, and all they say is Gary, and they just rush at you because they're all fucked up because they're like how many clones in because the clone machine just kept pumping them out. So
I
there was
feel like that's a
Gary.
Rick and Morty episode.
Yeah, I could see it. So there's a lot of really, really crazy shit. Before we get off the topic of vaults, I wanted to say one thing about Vault 32 and Vault 33 that I found really, really interesting. And it's more theory, we don't know for sure. But I mean, it alludes to it, and maybe some people are like, oh no, it's definitely for sure, or maybe I'm completely wrong. Put your comments in the comment section. First off, water chip. Fuck, any Fallout fan is laughing at that water chip. If you're a true Fallout fan, you're laughing at the water chip. The water chip was Fallout 1 was the whole thing was your water chip's bad, you have to go find a water chip, and then you're basically going through all this shit. You meet all these crazy wacky characters to try to get this water chip. And you don't have to in the end. In the end, you could be like, frig the vault, I don't care, and everybody in the vault dies. It's a great game. Play Fallout 1 if you haven't.
Well, that's Philly's mentality, right? Fuck the vaults.
Well, yes. And you can have that mentality. It's great. Everything happens, like all the bad shit that happens to 32 and 33 happens when there's some kind of upheaval and the overseers have to take control. So you heard the one guy said, "Oh yeah, I ran for Vault Overseer too when the other gentleman lost
Mhm.
after hanging up 10 whole posters. He lost
Mhm.
because that was his
He
campaign.
voted for Betty.
Right. They all voted for Betty, except for like 2%. But the other guy said, I was running, and then that damn Weevil famine happened, and yeah, we got Hank McLean. And if you heard, you know, now there was people running, and while they're talking about what are we gonna do with the Raiders, oh, water chip's broken. Guy comes in and says, "Hey, don't worry, but we only got 2 months of water left." And lo and behold, Betty gets it. And why does Betty get it? Because they have the mentality of when in doubt. What is it? Hang on. I have it written down.
Oh, yeah.
Um, I have it.
Oh my
Oh,
God, it's such a great
when
line.
things look glum, vote 31. So they already have this mentality of if something's gonna go bad, you better vote for somebody from Vault 31 because they can fix it all. Because they're the ones that set it up. Vault
Mhm.
31 is the ones that do the famine, destroy the crops, introduce the weevils, broke the water chip. They do it so that they can remain control until they're ready to come up to the surface, which I don't think is
Cult.
which which is never going to happen. I don't think it's ever their desire to go up to the surface at this point in time in the foreseeable future. My point saying that is because half of the uh, Vault 32 is all dead, not from the Raiders. We know it was 2 years prior. They didn't die from the Raiders. Um, and they're repopulating both vaults. That's going to extend it by at least a few generations to repopulate both of
Mhm.
those vaults so that they can go up together, which was supposed to be the point. Um,
Well, and they also say a lot of like the radiation levels on the surface are still too strong. And when I heard that, I was like, well, how do we know that? Like, if nobody actually goes to the surface, how do you know that the radiation? But again, if
now we
we
know that they
adopt the
did, but
idea, yeah, if we adopt the idea though that the vaults are a cult, you don't question it. You
right,
just are like, okay, this is what they're telling me, and I just have to believe it. And this is why I wouldn't be a good vault dweller because I'd be like, well, cite your research.
yeah,
I don't get it.
yeah. But again, it's that fear, right? You're gonna
Hmm.
trust the person because if it is super radiated, they might throw me out there. It's all fear based. The whole
Yeah.
kit and caboodle is all fear based. Um, and that's why I think, and I'm sure we'll get into Norm too. I think Norm is going to be a crucial character in season 2,
Oh
but
yeah,
his
yeah, yeah.
his change is just as much as Lucy, in my opinion, but in a totally different way. because he's not the physical kind. He's much more of the mental, clever boy kind of type of
Yeah,
thing.
I didn't like him at first.
I didn't either.
And I was like, he's just kind of this weird little Weasley kid. Like, I don't know, he grew on me something
He did,
fierce. Like
yeah.
that his storyline is where I was actually more interested in his storyline at one point than I was in Lucy's. And because I'm like, what is going on in
Yeah.
31? I need to know what happened in 32. What's going on in 31?
Yeah.
And I'm very excited to see where his character goes because I, I'm I feel like again he's questioning, which is something you don't do,
Mhm.
and I want to know what's going to happen to him, what the result is going to be, especially too because now I believe her name is Stephanie is the overseer in 32.
Mhm.
She came from 31, and I'm like, who are you though?
Yeah.
Because I don't know that we saw who she was,
Yeah.
and um, so she has a kind of a close relationship with Norm. So I'm interested to see where that goes now that he has that information. At 31 is basically just people in cryo pods, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
from the year 2077 or whatever year they came out of,
Yeah.
um, and where that goes.
I'm really excited to see too, because they kind of alluded like, oh, your only way out is to get into one of the cryopods and just stay frozen until we're ready for you. And I know he doesn't take it. I know he's gonna talk his way
No.
out of it because he's a clever kid. But I'm excited about that too. I think that at first they were close, but I think that when he realized, oh, you're from 31 too, he was like, you're and the eye patch. She's a bad guy, everybody. You can tell
Yeah.
she's got a damn eye patch. I loved the eye patch thing. I thought it was great that they made there she's going to be the main one of the main antagonists for Norm in season 2.
Mm.
I'm calling it right now. Um for the Vault 32 before we get off of Vaults. This is going to be Vault talk. Before we get off of the Vaults. Vault 32, my theory, do you think you know what happened in Vault 32? Like why they were all dead 2 years prior to
I,
the Raiders coming in?
I really couldn't put that together because it looked like they all just killed each other, and it was very I don't know. I wanted to know more because you saw all the little signs there that were saying things like, we know the truth, we know what's behind there.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to be like, how did you all figure it out? Like,
Yeah.
there's so many questions that I have, and I have to assume that 31 wiped them out.
Yep. Here's my theory.
I,
Here's my
okay.
theory. I'm gonna break it down for you. This could be completely wrong, and we're not gonna know until season 2. But my theory is, as I already said, I think that they use crises to manipulate and control the populace. I think that there was the overseer Betty, no, Hank. Hank said, "We're so sorry to hear of the passing of your last overseer." I think 31 knows that shit went, or everybody from 31 knows that shit went down in 32 2 years ago. I think that they know there's something up with what the fuck's going on. Like, why are there people in 32? And the reason I think they're all aware of the experiment that they're running. Remember, the 32 and 33 was all about management. It was all about setting the best managers because that's who should repopulate the world because Bud's crazy about management. So they put
Mm-hmm.
these things out there that, you have to manage your way through all of these crises that you're going to see on the surface. It's a way to test their managers and their population. They put a starvation / drought kind of thing on 32 because they talked about how their crops are gone. I think during that, instead of people being like, just dealing with it and trying to manage their way through it, I think they started to question. Like Norm figured out everybody from 31 is overseer to 32 and 33. I think they started to piece together there's something going on here. Maybe there was a drought and like 50 years later there's another drought, or 25 years later. It's almost like clockwork. Maybe they put some pieces together, and I think there was either a civil war where people from 31 and people from 32 fought each other because they're like 31 knows um they're from cryostasis, or their ancestors were, and 32 are the regular populace. So I think there was either a civil war where they did kill each other, or there's a scene where somebody is standing in front or sitting in front of a television screen, and he has a fork and the toaster,
The
and there's
toaster.
something playing with mice.
Hmm.
So they're like little white mice, like lab mice. What I think is there was a program that they played on the computer on the TV as a failsafe, where if they played something, because we already know that through audio and and pheromones and other ways and other vaults, they've controlled the populace or wiped them out, um, or mutated them or whatever they wanted to do to them. Maybe there was a television program that they could play as a failsafe that would turn everybody into like crazy people, and they would start attacking anybody that they had around them. So, a couple of different theories, but I think that like you said, Vault 32 people found out they wanted the answers. They tried to break down 31's door to try to get in and find those answers, and 31's like, nope, we're not risking this. We'll clear it out. We'll start over, or they weren't going to start over. And it wasn't until Betty knew that Norm saw it, because she knows he went over there. He's coming back. He's
Mm-hmm.
covered in junk and soot. She knows he went over there. She's like, we got to do something. I'm the only overseer that can do this. So she ordered it cleaned up. Whoever was in 31 that knew the secrets went over and cleaned it up, made it all pretty, fresh paint, all that shit. And they're like, okay, we're just going to have to repopulate both of them. But they're going to still experiment on both of them.
It's interesting that you brought up the TV with the mice on it. Now, I didn't catch that, admittedly, but one of the things I did catch was that in Vault 33, when Maximus goes in there, the TV is playing a video of a waterfall, which is a super
You mean
calming
Fallout? Wait, which vault? Because Maximus didn't went into Vault 4.
33. Was it 4?
They're
4,
from
yes.
4. Okay.
Yeah, so Vault 4, my bad. He's in Vault 4 and they're playing a video of a waterfall, which is a super calming image. And it was his switch from this is a cult to this is the best place ever was very interesting to me because it happened super quick.
Yeah.
And I was like, this dude just drank the Kool-Aid. Like
Real
that's just what happened here. And I wonder if that is a sort of control or therein lies an experiment. So if they play something on a TV that makes you so crazy that you want to that is an experiment in and of itself. And maybe playing this super calming waterfall is tricking you into feeling like this is the best place ever and we're making people a little bit more compliant
It's
and
possible.
easily manipulated.
It's possible.
I don't know. I didn't catch the mouse one, and maybe with the mouse too, where my head kind of went with that is that we often use, like you said, lab rats. We use mice in experiments. Maybe they just figured it out from watching something with mice that they figured out that they're lab rats. And imagine going your entire life believing that this is the end all be all, this is the greatest thing.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually we're going to go to the surface and repopulate the earth only to find out that you're just a rat in a maze.
Mm-hmm.
Got to imagine that that's going to cause a lot of controversy for a person, a lot of internal struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, maybe that's a far stretch, but yeah, the TV thing was just super interesting to me.
Yeah. I didn't have that written down, but yeah, for sure. The other thing that they don't really talk about, but has always been a thing for the Fallout fan community is after so long, you do only have cousins because after I think it's like as little as like 3 generations, all those people would have already intermingled. I'll have to double check on the math, but there was somebody that broke it down like any vault that's still around after 200 years and is still sealed, they're just all inbreds at this point because you can't go to the third cousin because they just don't exist anymore because the families are so intertwined. And that's what I thought the original. I loved the idea. They talked about it a bit with like, cousin stuff is fun, and they kind of play with the idea of like, yeah, we're probably all cousins at this point. So that's why they get people from the other vault, and they actually like it's almost like medieval arranged marriage where they're like, oh, we have seed and mechanical parts for you, and in exchange you're giving us a breeder. I thought at first that's why they had the Vault 32 and Vault 33 connected, because they knew they were going to be in there for a long time and they wanted to make sure that the gene pools weren't too incestuous. But then we find out that it's more of, it is partly that, or it is that, but they were using them as experiments for both of them. So interesting.
Hmm.
That's all I got for Vaults. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't have anything more on the vaults.
Yeah, sorry I went on tangents.
Oh, that's good.
But Norm is pretty much like in the thick of it with the Vault.
Mm-hmm.
He's like the main character in that storyline, which I couldn't be happier with. I love Norm. I think he's excellent. I love the actor who portrays him. I think they did a great job with him. So what do you got for Norm?
Really didn't have much on Norm. He, like I said, he's not a character that I really enjoyed in the beginning. He just kind of seemed like very Weasley for me. Not somebody that I was super interested in. I'm like, this is just the younger brother. He's kind of a throwaway character almost. And he really came into his own with the questioning and the investigations and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, it again, like when you go from this cult-like perspective, just following with no questioning, it's just do as they say. To kind of separate from that, I mean, that takes a lot of balls to do. I mean, to start questioning your leaders and the truth, trying to figure out the truth, takes, a lot of courage to do, which I did not feel that he had in the beginning. He just seemed very much like a rule follower. And like I said, I got to a point where I was just mostly interested in his storyline and the information that he was going to find. I think that there's some cognitive dissonance going on for him very, very strongly as well. He's believed, in the Vault-Tec uh, propaganda essentially for so long that now he's seeing some things that he's beginning to question. And again, do you just ignore it and continue going on with everyday life as if everything is great? Or do you change your attitudes and beliefs in order to fit this new information that you figured out? And he chooses that option. His attitudes and beliefs are starting to change because he's being presented with new information that contradicts the information that he's been given pretty much since he's been born. So very much in line with Lucy and learning to adapt to the situation. And again, he's in a sticky situation right now because now he knows the truth and he's stuck in this vault with just a brain and a robot.
Love brain
And
bots.
yeah, brain bot. And he can either choose to go in his dad's cryopod and just wait it out, which you got to know that even if he does choose that option, that he's never getting out. And I'm sure he knows that too. Or using his intelligence, because he's an extremely intelligent person, to figure out a way out. And I got to believe he's going to outsmart Brainbot, because that's just kind of how he is. He's just very, very highly intelligent, which shows me that maybe he's not as vulnerable as some of the other vault dwellers. That yes, everything is fear-based here. And sure, he is afraid, and you see that when he's going with Lucy to let her out into the wasteland. He's afraid for her. He somehow channels that into figuring out the truth. And that intelligence, I think, is really what's going to save him moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. I think that he was, just as Lucy was the perfect person to go outside, because though she is very indoctrinated and very, this truth is ingrained, she actually continues to hold the values that she believed in while she goes through things. I think even in the first episode, you see like she goes, I'm Lucy, blah 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 blah, and yeah, my brother is a little bit harder to get him involved in stuff. He's sitting there playing like an asteroids kind of game. I can't remember. Fallout fans, I know you're screaming the name of the game for me because I played it on my Pip-Boy too. I know there's a name to it, okay? But he's playing a little game on his Pip-Boy while dad and daughter are talking excitedly about something over the dinner table. He's like, yeah, whatever, I'm disinterested. So I think that he was perfectly situated to have this growth as a character because he was already like, I'm here, whatever. He was kind of like that I hate to say it, was kind of like us in high school. Like that kid that's just like, yeah,
Accurate.
I'm not really drinking. I'm not really following everything you're saying, but I'm safe. I'm fed. I'm warm. I guess I'm okay with it. Just very like blasé about it. And that's when, when she goes, they're sitting there and they're listening to Betty and the rest of the overseers or the committee talking about like, oh, we're so sorry that, or so we feel so bad that Hank's missing. We're just going to have to move on and deal with what we're going to do with the Raiders. And he goes, they don't want to find him because then they're not in power anymore. Like he's already like this cynic. And that's why I like at that moment, I was like, there's something about this kid that I like. And then, him growing from, I loved the conversation between him and Betty. He's sitting alone and she gives him a piece of the Jello pie after she becomes overseer. And he's already asked some questions that have kind of made her a little off about him. But they have a conversation where she says, I'll put the clip in here. But basically she's saying, clever boys like you when you're angry are way more dangerous than other people, because you're going to figure shit out that we don't want you to. So she already knows that her biggest adversary is this kid. It's not the big goon in Chet, or Chad, whatever his name is.
Chet.
Is it Chet? I love that it's Chet. But it's not Chet, Chet would be like 8 strength, 2 intelligence. Like the dude is just like, and he's a big, strong looking dude, but he's not the smartest. So then you pair him with Norm. I want them to get back together and do like it's almost like a buddy comedy between those two.
Yeah.
So I'm really hoping for season 2 that Norm gets out, because we know he's going to. He's going to deal with, I think he's going to take over 32 in season 2, because that's going to be his big adversary is Stephanie with the eye patch. He's going to like convince Chet to come back on his side. They're going to take over Vault 32 and then they're going to take over Vault 33. And he's not a good, I don't think he's the best person. And that's what I love about him. He's a very great character. They're like, what are we going to do about these Raiders? Oh, we should teach him philosophy and Shakespeare. And he's like, we should just kill him. And everyone's like, whoa, wait a second. He's like, what?
And I had the same thought.
Yeah.
I had the same thought. I'm like, why wouldn't you just kill him?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. But I like that you brought up that quote from Betty, where clever boys are, dangerous or whatever, because that's exactly the same thought that I had, is that he is highly intelligent. And you see, like, he's been working with computers and things like that for a job in the vault. But, he loses all these jobs because he basically says he's disinterested, which tells me that he's highly intelligent, because when you are not challenging somebody of high intelligence, they tend to get bored and become disinterested in things. And that intelligence is dangerous to the vaults, and again, to a cult, because you're questioning things and you're starting to dig a little bit more and figure things out. And so to counter that, they give him these ridiculous jobs that are well below his skill level. So he gets a job basically delivering food to the Raiders. And that's demeaning, but it also, I feel, is a way to kind of keep him contained from using his intelligence to be able to uncover what's going on. And of course, we see that being the intelligent person he is, so I would say with the special score, his intelligence is probably way up there, but his strength is not very high.
Right.
Therefore, he employs Chet, who's got the strength, and they together are able to uncover a little bit more. And again, he's able to hack into computers and things like that. I mean, to the point where he hacks into Betty's computer and tricks BrainBot into believing that he's Betty, and then gets into Vault 31. So, yeah, his intelligence is definitely something that is to be feared. And it's going to be, I agree that Stephanie's going to be his biggest adversary, because again, he was already sort of butting heads with her. I loved the interaction where he's like, what's the difference between here and Vault 31? She's like, well, the mashed potatoes are better. It's like, oh yeah, that's what my dad used to say.
Yeah.
And you could see that even she was putting the pieces together. Like, clearly he has some information that he is not supposed to have.
Right. Yeah. I that interaction was so cool, because I was like, you see both of their true characters. Like, he had just got done with saying with Chet, like, you don't see, like, we saw what we saw, man. Like, and don't you think it's weird that everything always comes down to Vault 31? Like, when things seem glum, Volt 31, like he brings it up. He's like, "Isn't that weird?" And Stephanie's from 31, and then like you see their true characters come out. She's like, "Oh, I wonder. That's so weird. I guess the mashed potatoes are kind of better." And you're just like, "Wow, she is selling it so hard." I love
Mm-hmm.
Stephanie. At first I was like, "Oh, okay, she's pregnant, mom." Again, first episode, I felt like everybody. You saw the main characters, and the rest you were like, "Oh, who else is gonna step up?" Did not see Chet as a main character. Did not see
No.
Stephanie coming in as like gonna be like the antagonist in season 2. If I'm wrong, I'll look back at this with different eyes. But yeah, I was just like, I was blown away with how cool and intricate they started to make it. And as you went further along, like you said, you're like, what is Norm gonna find next? You were so interested. And even me knowing what Vault-Tec does, um, even me, I'm just like, what the hell's in Vault 31? I need to know. It was such a cool, even for me, it was a cool experience with Norm. And I will correct, I know I've called it Brainbot. That's just my cute little nickname for Bud, but it would be like a miniature Robo Brain. All my Fallout fans that are like, it's called a Robo Brain. I know it's called a Robo Brain. Okay, I know. But he's a cute little brain bot with a little needle that he was gonna try to kill somebody with. He was by
Hold
far
still.
right. Don't go anywhere. He's like, don't you? He's like, you'll never figure it out. And then he presses the button. He's like, oh, he's gonna figure it out. Like just that little brain bot. Just I love him. I love Bud. I didn't like Bud as a human, but him as a little brain bot.
No.
Um, just fantastic. Just very very well done. The vaults were honestly spot on. I saw early images of the vaults and I was like, holy crap, they look so good. But then to see like the projection of like the farmland and just everything about it was just so perfect. If anybody's a Fallout fan and is not watching real quick, if anybody's a Fallout fan and is not watching because you're like, oh, they probably ruined it. They did such a good job, and I haven't gone through it. I'm going through it a third time now. I haven't gone through it with a fine-tooth comb, but I couldn't even see a poster in the background out of place. All right. So when I say that they did their due diligence to make sure that there was like nothing that would not be in the Fallout realm, Fallout universe, I'm telling you, they went to great lengths to put the smallest minute details to make it realistic. Even the shit that they introduced, totally Fallout. That leg thing that he puts on, the doctor there after he gets his leg blown off, that thing, though I don't think, Fallout fans, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, I don't think I've ever seen that particular amputee boot thing. Totally could see it in Fallout, because Fallout, like the universe sucked. And they just had these weird technological marvels that were really just terrible. So could totally see it. Anyway, I'm sorry I cut you off.
No, I was just thinking when you were talking about the projections, and I was just thinking of that scene with Lucy where she's like, I think she was talking to Maximus, and she's like, we have these projections, but when I would sit out in the sun with my mom, it almost felt like it was real. And then you learn that it was
It
real.
was, yeah.
She was out in the sun.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how real these projections seem to the vault dwellers, like to the point where they feel like they can feel the sun beating down on them.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really know, like the vault dwellers don't really know what sunlight looks like. I
Mm-hmm.
mean,
Well, Hank did.
so to them,
Dick.
well, Hank did, yeah, but
Dick.
he's not a good person, so.
Yeah. All right. So before we wrap up today, I do want to touch on the BOS, because we did talk about the cult aspect of it. And
Mhm.
what I love about I love and hate. So I'm gonna preface this whole conversation. I despise the Brotherhood of Steel. Anybody that knows me knows that I freaking hate the Brotherhood of Steel. I do have a full scale power armor statue in my basement, which I will post, so you all know I'm not joking. But
He's not joking.
I'm not joking. We actually cut a hole in the ceiling. You'll see it in the picture. I cut a hole in the ceiling to fit this power armor statue. I hate the Brotherhood of Steel because they treat everybody else in the world like babies. If you've watched the show and you're not a huge Fallout fan, they did touch it. Lucy did touch upon it in the show, saying, "So let me get this straight. You steal technology from other people and use it so that other people can't have technology. And Maximus
Mm-hmm.
is like, yeah, I mean, when you put it like that, it doesn't sound good. So
Mm-hmm.
this leads me to the point of nobody really believes in what the Brotherhood of Steel is saying. You have the first knight who doesn't say almost anything to Maximus until he runs into a Yaoguai, which is the big bear,
Mm-hmm.
and just, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, is totally afraid and is just a little bitch, basically, in a big tin can. And then he's dying, and he's basically saying, like, they send me on these shit missions, they put me with people who can't do anything. Clearly breaking the spell that Maximus saw the Brotherhood of Steel. Like, he's like, you don't deserve to wear that armor. Nobody deserves to wear that armor because there's very few people in the Brotherhood of Steel that actually believe the shit that they're spewing. And then you have Thaddeus. That was the squire. If you don't know, he's fantastic. Love Thaddeus. Know he's gonna come back, and I know he's gonna be an awesome ghoul. I'm very excited to see Thaddeus as a ghoul. Um, you know, when he turns into a ghoul, at first he's like, "Yeah, I'm your squire. I'm gonna, I'm all for this. I'll take the lead in this charge." And then even when he finds out, he's like, "You're a disgrace to the Brotherhood. I'm gonna expose you." And he goes running off. And then he becomes a ghoul, and none of it matters. He's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh shit, they're gonna kill me because he just, he got the arrow to the neck. He's like, they're gonna kill me, they're gonna kill me. And then, Maximus is the bigger person and says, give the head to me, I'll take care of it. And he goes, okay, okay. And then Lucy's like, wait, isn't the Brotherhood of Steel the good guys? And he's like, we're really complicated. And he knows that he's gonna, no matter
Mm-hmm.
all the years of loyalty that he showed the Brotherhood of Steel, he knows he's a ghoul, he's gonna die because they're bigots. So he goes running off. It just shows that, and even Maximus at the end, you see like the guy goes, me and you, we're gonna change the Brotherhood of Steel, we're gonna make it what it's supposed to be. And Maximus doesn't really give him an answer, but at the end he's like, all hail Knight
Night,
Maximus, or
Maximus.
whatever the hell they call him. um and even he's kind of like, you don't get the same I mean, I didn't anyway, I didn't get the same gist
Mm-hmm.
that he was buying what they were selling anymore. He saw the vault, he saw the rest of the world, he saw his friend, even though his friend was trying to turn him in, he saw his friend was going to be killed by the same people that he follows. You know what I mean? He knows that they're not great people anymore. So now he's stuck.
Mm-hmm. And again, you're presented with new information, and so what do you do? Do you ignore it and continue on as you were, or do you change your attitude, belief, and behavior in order to adapt?
Yeah.
And we see that with Maximus. He does change. From the beginning, all he wants to do is be a knight. And you get glimpses of his past where, the bomb is dropped, he's emerging from this, it looks like a refrigerator, and he sees the power armor, and immediately you can see the look in his face. You don't even need words to see that he's like, this is amazing, this is my savior, this is what I want to be a part of.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you see him in the Brotherhood of Steel, he really just wants to prove himself, is what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
He's getting beat up by all these different people, including Thaddeus, which is hilarious to me. Then
Mm-hmm.
again, yeah, confronted with it, the Knight Titus is incapacitated and spewing all of this stuff to discredit the Brotherhood and shatter his belief of what the Brotherhood is. Yes, he says, you don't deserve to wear that armor, and he takes the armor for himself. But the entire time, before Knight Titus dies, he tells him, like, they're going to kill you for this. If you let me die, they're going to kill you for this.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of a place, if it's supposed to be this, end all be all, a great place to be, I guess, is just going to kill you simply because you weren't able to save your knight.
Mm-hmm.
And he takes the power armor, he gets a chance to prove himself, and Thaddeus comes along and he's feeling good about himself. He's got a squire, he's telling him to clean stuff and do all this stuff for him. And then again, when he reveals himself, Thaddeus is like, they're going to hang you for this.
Mm-hmm.
Cult. It's a
Yeah.
cult.
Yeah.
It's 100% a cult. Like, you're following this guy, and I don't know that guy's name either, but he's old and whatever. And he's telling you how to live your life, essentially. And everybody's following orders blindly and wanting to move up in ranks just to prove themselves and do again, you know, happiness comes from believing that they've done something good in a cult and believing that we have the truth to the best way of life. And that's the Brotherhood. They think this is the way to live. To quote the Mandalorian, this is the way.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the way,
Very
though.
Mandalorian.
And Maximus, yeah, and Maximus realizes this after again he's confronted with new information from the vaults. He meets Lucy, which also shatters what he knows about the vaults. And then again, the battle at the end too, where he's confronted with the leader, the Flame Mother, and she is telling him some stuff about the Brotherhood. Obviously, she doesn't like the Brotherhood. And you can see that he is learned that this is not the place for him. Their ideals are not what he believes in anymore. I didn't really like the Brotherhood much either. Like from the get go, I know nothing about the Brotherhood of Steel. I've heard of them, but I didn't know much about them. And right from the jump, I was like, I do not get good vibes about this place. It seems like they just want, and that is what they say. They just want to take over the wasteland at the expense of human life, which people are already, people have already died. There's been enough death. And Maximus says this one quote that I really liked, where he says, "Everyone wants to save the world, they just disagree on how." And that's really what you see a lot with the Brotherhood, with the Flame Mother, with the Vaults. Everybody wants to save it, but they disagree on how, so they just destroy it more. And it seems like the Brotherhood does this more than most.
Yeah. All right, I think that's it for today. We covered a lot of stuff. Lots of stuff about the vaults, which I'm excited about. I love the vaults. Next episode, we'll probably definitely get into the ghoul. I think there's a lot of stuff we're going to talk about with him. Get more into Lucy and Maximus as characters, a little bit deeper into them, and a few little bits and bobs along the way. If you like what you saw, please go ahead and leave a like. You can also leave some comments for us. I mentioned it a few times, but at any point, if you thought we were right, wrong, want to add anything, please add some comments. We love reading them. Hit that subscribe if you want to see the next episode. If you haven't seen our last episodes, episode 1 and 2 were all about Has-Been Hotel. So if you're a big fan of that, please, by all means, go check those out. They're really fun. Nicole, anything else you want to say?
Nope, just again, to echo Colleen, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share with your friends, and let us know if there's anything that you would like us to cover that we can check out and make the decision if we feel that we are qualified to cover that.
Yeah, definitely need to be qualified. Also, all of our socials are linked in the description below. We're on Instagram, Facebook,
And
Twitter, TikTok. Go ahead and follow us on there. We post when we have new episodes. We also post shorts and things like that. We're just getting started, so let us build up a little bit, but we'll make it pretty. All right, that's it for today. We will see you next week when we talk about the rest of the Fallout show. So thanks everybody for being here, and we'll catch you next time.